Well, we've definitely entered a new world where a player at Georgia can legitimately, I would say, sue Georgia's arch rival. Jaden Rashada has sued the Gators for a significant amount of money, and it just not just the Gators, but Billy Napier as well. Now, whether Billy will be there in the near future, I don't know, but a $13.85 million agreement that was backed out of by the gate. I don't. What the truth will come out during this information from during the lawsuit, but Billy promised Rashada $1 million. You can see this here from the ESPN report. That the lawsuit filed Tuesday includes an allegation that Rashada signed an NIL, his is national level intent to the Gators on December 21st, an hour after Napier promised the player's father a $1 million partial payment. That day, upon signing, Rashada never received the $1 million, and the boosters, talking about it, Florida, never fulfilled the deal. The lawsuit, it says states, but alleges. Look, we're entering a new world here. ESPN did some really good reporting on this. There's a lot of data in here that's being alleged from the Rashada side of things. One source promised $13.85 million was Hugh Hathcock, a donor, an 8-figure donor to the Gators. He is also a defendant in the lawsuit, along with his Destin, Florida auto dealership, Velocity Automotive. Says that when Rashada, it states that Hathcock approached Rashada when Rashada visited the Gators in June of 22 and said he would get the quarterback, quote, whatever he needed, and mentioned a possible job for the father last summer. The lawsuit states that Hathcock put $1 million figure on that deal, which was $11 million. So, look, there's a lot of different things going on here at once. First of all, we certainly have entered a new world. And no matter how much people, say they don't like NIL or don't like NIL or whatever, the truth of the matter is, and I've lived in contract world for a long time. If you have an agreement and you do not fulfill that agreement, yeah, you can be sued. I don't see what's abnormal about that. What's so strange is the newness of all this. You have to remember, Rashada had an agreement, in theory, with Miami for nearly $10 million for an NIL deal. So he's really the first guy who's come about saying, hey, what I agreed to was not fulfilled. This is not going to be the last time this happens. I'm going to tell you that right now. But it is certainly, it's new. It's not strange that people are involved in lawsuits. What is complicated here? There's a lot of stuff that's complicated all at once. They may all be somewhat intertwined, but they're not all the same thing. I don't know what the rules are with NIL still. And it's not out of ignorance. I think that the problem is there's far too much confusion about where we are in college football. There has been far too much confusion. I don't think this is the most important problem in our country by any stretch, but I do think that, it would make sense for this to be an act of Congress. And I think that, having done multiple NIL deals, they weren't, you pay the player or their representative, and the player executes what you're asking them to do. That's what it's been like for me. And I said multiple because it's been multiple. I don't know what's happened here with the allegations are that Florida didn't come to play, didn't pay what, was due. And so if you remember, I don't know if you remember, he left Florida about 18 months ago on January 18th. He got a $150,000 payment apparently. And he left, with no payment other than the $150,000 payment on June 28th. January 18th, easy enough for me to say, 2023, Rashada withdrew his intent to play for Florida. And remember, I believe the Gators just let him go. Now, then he went to Arizona State, and was banged up. He played a fair amount. It started, I think, a game or two. But now he's at Georgia, right? So this is why this is just so this is why this is so this is a new frontier, and Georgia itself is not involved in it, but one of its 85 scholarship players is. That's a problem. That's a problem, because I don't, when you look at the global landscape of these things, if you have an agreement, and I don't know what was signed and what wasn't, but if you're bringing a lawsuit, you're not just bringing a lawsuit. There's very, very rarely are people just going to do that. But if you're bringing a lawsuit, that means that you've got some proof that this happened or occurred, or there was an agreement that happened. And if Florida, the way I look at it is, if Florida did not fill their obligation, the kids do the money. Now, whether what were the contingencies there? Was it that he was going to get paid, the however many dollar, what was it, 14 or 30, let's just call it 14 million. It's not 14 million, but was he due all 14 right at the? That would be idiotic to just say, oh yeah, we're going to pay you $14 million in year one. We don't know if you have a congenital heart failure. We don't know if you could have leukemia. You could break your neck and never play again. You could there's no possible way that they said, we're going to give you all 13.85 million of this right up front. That, talk about stupidity. A. B. There's just not, college players are not worth $14 million a year. They're just not. They are not worth $14 million a year. I'm trying to think of the most recent, like Johnny Manziel. I think maybe you can make the case that he was. Cam, maybe. But, that is more than, now that's, Kirby Smart makes about this much a year. And I understand this would be for the time he's at Florida. But there's no way he is worth, a $14 million as an unproven prospect. We get what we do with quarterbacks too, and I've seen this up close. There's way too much irrational exuberance with quarterbacks in college football and recruiting. It is beyond, it is insane that we get to that point. The three of the last four guys who won the national championship, well, four of the last five, if you include Joe Burrow, they were not highly touted at their school at times. So we get way too out of control with all of this. But I don't know where this is going to lead. But I'm going to tell you right now, if you have a signed agreement and one party did not fulfill their obligation, then they, the party that alleged that broke it, it is completely reasonable for them to be sued. And I really think this is not great for college football on a lot of levels. But this is not going to be the last time this happens. I'm not going to run Florida down, because in many cases, right now, it'd be too easy. But I have to say, the only place where this has happened so far is Florida. It is concerning on a lot of levels. You don't want head coaches getting tied up into lawsuit or litigation. 18 months ago at Georgia, two children died. That were a part of Georgia's football program, and there were a lot of lawsuits. Kirby Smart was not mentioned in those lawsuits at all, unless I've forgotten, or he was not. So, here you got Billy Napier, in a much less serious situation, but Billy Napier is listed as, I guess, as a defendant. I don't. It just can't, this cannot happen. The case filed in the United States District Court of the Northern District of Florida. we don't. This lawsuit could be too early. It could be. I mean, it's certainly not too late. There's so much mumbo jumbo going on right now. I mean, I could see where the circuit or the district court could say, well, there, we can't really make a judgment on this, or the jury could say, we can't really make a judgment on this because the laws were so scattered at the time that we were, what was reality? Or they could say, it doesn't matter what the NIL deal. The NIL was legal, so it's always been legal. It was permissible. Well, here's the other problem. Let me just stop myself right there. At no time has it been against the law to pay someone to do something. It has been against, that's probably not completely accurate in terms of collegiate sports. You cannot act like an agent. There's certain little things, but at no point has it been, I can't pay a player. That's against bylaws of the NCAA. That's not the same thing as breaking state or federal law. There could be state law in Florida that I'm completely unaware of. Not an attorney. Don't live in Florida, so I don't know these things. But this is very murky. This is going to certainly run the time of Billy Napier's time at Florida because he's got about 9 months left. This will probably run the time of Rashada's time at Georgia because he probably only has, 3 years left or something like that. I mean, this is not going to just go away. And the bad part for Georgia is it is not at all out of the realm of possibility that Rashada is Georgia's starting quarterback in the future and he plays against the Gators. And that will bring a whole new level of scrutiny and so forth. What you do not want at all if you are Georgia, and you certainly don't want this if you're Florida, but Florida's in the middle of this, I think, it seems. There's going to be all sorts of discovery now. If I'm Florida, I figured out how not to have this problem a long time ago. And my criticism of Florida lately has been they're not handling this sort of stuff. This never needs to see the light of day, and it is. And if I were Florida, I would have figured out how to pay the kid, $1.5 or $2 million to go away and leave, because they're about to get at least that much in bad public relations, and we don't know where this could end. Florida had one of the most devastating. It took an SEC championship away from them, frankly. Couple. One of the most devastating violations in NCAA history in the 80s. That was really bad. That set them back, and frankly, only Steve Spurrier got them out of that mess. Okay, you do not want to go back to that position, and they won't, because they're in the SEC and it's a new world and it's just not that time anymore. But I would not want discovery is something that happens when you go to court. The defense gets everything that the plaintiffs, the prosecution has, and vice versa. You don't want you don't want phone records of you don't need all of Billy Napier's text messages for a 9-month period. That's about to happen, and it's about to be public. This is the sort of stuff where this just can't get out. And, they massively screwed this up. They either overpromised to a young man that, why wouldn't you take, almost $14 million? If Miami is offering you 10, it's not out of the realm of possibility that Florida could offer you and deliver 14. They either overpromised, promised when they weren't sure what the landscape was, okay, which is not as good. It's the same problem. You can't be this sloppy. This is Scott Strickland is probably on the way out at Florida too. And this isn't the reason why, but this is a good example of the reason why. This stuff's not getting handled. And, this is not good for college football. But they're an act of Congress needs to happen, and whoever the next president is, or if they can do it before, who, if there is a next president, in terms of in the near future, this has got to be dealt with. We do need some sort of regulatory world that we're living in with collegiate athletics. And, Congress has the ability, in theory, to well, at least act like they have control over the universities, certainly the public ones, but any of them that get federal funds, Congress can shake a sword at them. They really can't do a lot, but they can shake a sword at them. With the schools don't want that. So there's got to be something that we can come to a reasonable agreement here and take it from there. But this is not a good look for Florida. For Rashada, I mean, if someone promised me something and they didn't deliver it, and I wasted 6 months there or however long, or I could have legitimately gotten an NIL deal elsewhere, I'd be pretty pissed. Now I don't know what kind of digging they're going to do on him, but he's at Georgia now, and this is just not ideal for everybody involved. I'll say that.